I think that we had an issue with the video. So welcome everybody. I'm Roberto Alvarez. I'm the executive director of the GFCC. This is our Frame the Future conversation series, and I really wanted to welcome all of you and thank you so much for being here. The GFCC, it's a global multi-stakeholder organization with a footprint in 30 countries today. Our members are universities, corporations, private sector councils, and industry bodies, and government agencies. Combining our members and fellows, we've been working to really to foresee the future of competitiveness strategies and build new initiatives. It really is a pleasure to have you here all today for another Frame the Future conversation. Through the series, we are exploring how 5 future-defining topics: innovation, sustainability, resilience, inclusiveness, and partnership can be weaved into competitiveness strategies. And we are here today to talk local regional development. Since the beginning, the GFCC has been talking and working really to make local and regional development a fundamental part of competitiveness strategies. We've been reviewing a variety of competitiveness strategy decision areas in recent months, and we are here today to talk how growth, competitiveness, innovation meet on the ground. We have an amazing group of people joining us from across the globe today, and I will introduce them in a few minutes. In this session, what we wanted to do is really to have all of you being part of the conversation. So please share your questions on the chat. It's great to have you all here, but please don't forget to be part of the conversation. I'll get it started here with introducing our speakers briefly. And I think I just heard from our colleagues that the video is ready, but first, Vanessa, let me quickly introduce the colleagues here on this session. For sure, we have President Deborah Winston-Smith, the president of the GFCC. Deborah has been a leader in the United States and around the globe, working in competitiveness for several years. She was the first Assistant Secretary for Technology Commercialization in the Department of Commerce in the United States, and has had the privilege to work on several of the things that really make the U.S. an innovation powerhouse. Deborah is the president of the Council on Competitiveness in the United States, and for sure the president of the GFCC. Deborah, it's always an inspiration to be and work with you, so thank you so much. Joining us from Brasilia, Brazil, we have Jefferson Gomes. Jefferson is the superintendent of the Innovation and Technology at the National Service of Industrial Training in Brazil, SENAI. SENAI is one of the largest vocational training organizations in the globe, and what Jefferson does there really is to oversee a network of 27 translational research organizations in Brazil, all across the country. Jefferson is a professor at the Technology Institute of Aeronautics in Brazil. He sits on several boards, and he is the main researcher of one of the recently established networks for research on artificial intelligence in Brazil. Joining us today from Washington, D.C., we have Kwanzaa Hall. Kwanzaa is a former congressman in the United States, but above all, he's someone who has been working throughout his career as a community organizer, working with communities, driving economic development in Atlanta and across the United States. He served as an elected official on Atlanta City Council for several years. Kwanzaa sits on various boards, he drove a series of important economic development initiatives at District 2 in Atlanta that he represented. He was recognized for that. And now he is leading a new, the development and implementation of new innovation hub district in Atlanta. We will hear more about that soon. From Greece, we have Petros Doukas. Petros plays several roles. He's the chairman of the board of Capital Partners. It's an investment advisory company that has advised several banks in initiatives and projects in Greece. He worked for the government of Greece. He was the deputy minister of finance. He oversaw the privatization of different companies in Greece. So he was the deputy prime minister of foreign affairs in Greece. And he has worked with a variety of financial institutions all over the globe. And he is the mayor of Sparta in Greece. Wonderful to have you here, Petros. From the United Kingdom, from Northern Ireland, we have Paul Maiden. Paul is the director for the Century of Competitiveness, which is a GFCC member that works with companies to boost productivity levels. In the UK, Paul was the former general manager of Rolls-Royce Civil Aerospace in Northern Ireland. At the Century today, he has been working to drive digital transformation with a special focus on mid-size and small companies. And finally, from Denmark, we have Maria Scotti. Maria comes with a background in industry and with a background in energy and utilities. And she was a manager for EI, for climate change and sustainability. And now she is a director for Clean. Clean is a cluster of clean tech companies, sustainable technology companies based out of Copenhagen, but with different initiatives across Denmark, in Copenhagen, but also in other regions. It's wonderful to have you all here. And I think maybe before I turn to you, Deborah, we could quickly play the video, right, Vanessa?
Cities consume most of the resources in the globe. Innovation in energy, food, mobility, housing, sanitation, and more is needed locally. Regions and cities are where innovation hits the ground, where innovators live, meet, and create. Innovation ecosystems flourish with investment, infrastructure, talent, low-friction regulation, and the intentional work of connectors. How can we couple the development of innovation ecosystems with sustainability, inclusiveness, and partnerships? How can we resource globally and act locally to drive sustainable innovation? With the Frame the Future conversation series, we are engaging corporations, nonprofits, government agencies, universities, entrepreneurs, and you. We are bringing forward 5 future-defining topics: innovation, partnership, sustainability, resilience, and inclusiveness. With each topic, we're bringing forward new ideas, sharing insights, and driving change. Join global leaders and us on September 22nd to frame the future of local development. Global Federation.
So we're ready to start. Please don't forget to join the conversation. You can share your questions using the Q&A feature. If you have any cases, best practices, any comments, you can also use the chat to share those resources. Deborah, I want to turn to you for your initial remarks. You've been working on local-based innovation and competitiveness, driving that at the council. So we would love to hear your remarks.
Thank you, Roberto. And let me thank all of our distinguished panelists for joining us today, and those of you who are watching online, and we hope we'll have active discussion on the chat. I thought I'd just start by saying that the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, that's soon approaching its 31st year as a leadership organization of CEOs, university presidents, labor leaders, and national lab directors, really played the pivotal role in the United States and really around the world in first beginning to articulate the pivotal importance of regional innovation, local development, but the concept of clusters. And we did a major initiative in the late 90s that was co-chaired by Michael Porter at Harvard, who's really known as the father of cluster theory, and a number of CEOs and university presidents that articulated really what were the ingredients, as it were, the drivers, the integration for transforming regional economies. And I'll just share a couple examples. We looked at San Diego. Now, remember, this is about 1998, whose origin, really, in addition to being a wonderful holiday place, was and still is a major facility of the US Navy. That was its economy. And because of the investment in a university that's now of global preeminence, University of San Diego, coupled with the innovation of a startup company called Linkabit, which managed to get a small contract with the US Navy for communication, very quickly we saw the birth of Qualcomm, coupled to the Scripps Institute of Oceanography and Biotech. And so now today, San Diego is a region leader in global telecommunications, in microprocessors, all of that, plus biotech, sustainability, anchored with these great universities, venture capitalists, and it continues to grow and transform, linking into Mexico and the country at large. So I share that as an example of some of the core ingredients that have driven local and regional innovation. And of course, building off this initiative, the U.S. Council worked with our Department of Commerce in developing regional toolkits, as well as looking at what are some of the new issues that needed to be taken into consideration. And so this concept of local and regional is very important because, yes, local cities, rural areas have their rules, their regulations, but they need to look at themselves regionally. Today, the U.S. Council is leading a major national commission on innovation and competitiveness frontiers, chaired by our chairman, the CEO of Bank of America, president of University of Minnesota, director of Oak Ridge Lab, head of the Union of Electrical Workers. And interestingly, our lab director on this leadership group, Thomas Zachariah from Oak Ridge National Lab in Tennessee, has developed an incredible place-based innovation initiative anchored in Oak Ridge, University of Tennessee, and that whole corridor in Tennessee, reaching into other parts of the country, building on talent, technology, investment, and infrastructure. So those are just a few examples, that are moving forward in the United States. But I want to say that one of our challenges, and I think this is true throughout the world, is to link together our capabilities in cities with rural regions. And in the United States in particular, and I have to turn to Kwanzaa because he led tremendous work in Atlanta, which was one of the areas we studied in our first cluster initiative. And of course, Atlanta also merged into a major logistics, energy hub, and many other things, anchored with its incredible universities and creative people. But we have to do a better job in the United States of having all our components of the country be part of the innovation, sustainability, resiliency journey. We can't just have hubs of innovation in Silicon Valley and Boston and Chicago and Austin. So we're working very hard in the United States of how to build up place-based innovation so all Americans, irrespective of where they live, will participate in the innovation future. And I know we're going to hear some really amazing stories of how this is being done around the world. But I think we're at the point now where we need new models, new initiatives, and new ways to carry forward this regional innovation is really the driver of prosperity and inclusiveness in our respective countries. And so really excited about the conversation. It's great to see all my friends and colleagues here and also meet Maria from Denmark as well. So I look forward to a great stimulating discussion.
Thank you so much, Deborah. And also to reminding everybody, Deborah, that transformation is possible. I think that San Diego is an amazing example. And even, let's say, our friend, your friend, Julie may pop by at some point. So thank you so much for sharing that. We will have like an initial round with our colleagues here today. And I really wanted to start with you, Petrus. But before that, I wanted to say that this session is only possible because of the support of the Brazilian National Confederation of Industry. And Jefferson will turn to you in a few minutes too. But I really want to thank you and colleagues who are here, like Marcos Arcuri and for sure Gianna and her whole team for making this session possible. So Petrus, I want to turn to you. You are a mayor. You are in some way facing this challenge, but also opportunity that Deborah has highlighted about revitalizing or transforming a region, a place. So over to you, and let's make this a dynamic conversation.
Hi from the mayor's office of Sparta. You can see the Byzantine flag here, in the middle, the Greek flag, the European flag in the end, and the flag of Sparta next to the end. Deborah and Roberto, really congratulations for what you have been doing. You have been doing an amazing job. Just the networking that you provide, let alone the ideas and all the other stuff, is enough to really say, well done and keep up the good work. Now, regarding local and regional development, there may possibly two paths. One can say we want to become a high-tech innovator, or we can become where our really natural advantage is a little bit lower tech. For example, for Sparta, we don't intend to become an aerospace hub, and I don't think we can become an artificial intelligence hub. So we won't spend money in that direction, but we're doing some other things in parallel. We said, okay, what are our natural advantages in Sparta over which we can build into something bigger and better and provide more jobs for the younger generations? We say one natural advantage is our agricultural products. They're quite amazing in terms of tastefulness. The other is tourism, because people are attracted to the brand name of Sparta and they want to come and visit this ancient civilization and Byzantine civilization, because there are two cities, Sparta and Mistras. Mistras is the only place in the world where you have Byzantine palaces still remaining and beautiful churches of the 12th century and what have you. So history is the second thing. The third is culture. We want to base our growth into cultural activities, and I'll get back into that. And the fourth is sports. I'm going to the last idea of sports. We want to make Sparta, and we're already doing it, into the international center of long distance running. We don't expect to have baseball teams or NBA kind of basketball teams. We don't have the facilities. We don't have enough spectators, even if they were available. But to become a great outdoor sports center globally is something that we're already working, and it's working. And we're signing next week with the Minister of Sports of Greece a memorandum so they can help us achieve that goal faster and better. We have already about 15 super long distance runs scheduled for the next 12 months, and people are now realizing that we are becoming this hub. In agriculture, we're saying, let's get the top 200 people that are involved in agriculture and link them together, develop jointly, and we're already doing that, brand name and an emblem and an insignia that this thing is made in Sparta, or this is Sparta, or something along these lines. Allow them and help them, because most of them are small. We're talking from sale. I have to deal with people that have sales from 10,000 euros to 7 million. We don't have mega companies of 30 or 40 million, and we don't have, the 1,000. Because Sparta is basically something that a place that has general income equality. We don't have tremendous wealth, and we don't have tremendous poverty. It's lower middle, and a little higher middle incomes. You won't see anybody starving around. Everybody has his food. Everybody has his own house and what have you. So in terms of agriculture, we're developing this network. We're already planning the 2 Spartagrotica major conferences. We're inviting experts to show how each and every farmer can double his income by using more scientific methods, more surgical methods to develop his plants or his gardening kind of products. And that is working very well. In terms of culture, we're saying what? People know Sparta because it's the first place that had a constitutional democracy, constitutional monarchy, the constitutional senate. For the first time, you had here in this place a free public universal education. All the kids had free mandatory education at the expense of the city. So we're attracting that with a series of very, very major international conferences. And last but not least, there was a dilapidated airport that hasn't been used for 40 years, but still the runway seems to be in good condition. We got experts to check it, and we hope that in the next 4 months we'll have an airport that's in workable and working condition. So these lower tech, but things that fit our state of affairs, is what we're investing in, and this is where we're spending money. Agriculture, tourism, culture, and sports. Floor to you, Roberto.
Thank you so much, Petrus, and thanks for reminding us. And our colleague Chad Evans has shared some resources on the chat here, but also this concept that you are implementing in practice of understanding the assets that you have and building on top of that. So thanks for sharing that. But you said that you are not doing aerospace or something like that, but you are bringing technology into food. But talking aerospace, Paul has been working on aerospace in Northern Ireland. So Paul, I want to turn to you really to see, to get your insights on regional, local development, growth, innovation. You've been working with local companies really to help them to enhance their capabilities to go through digital transformation. But I also know that the Centre has been working in the clean tech space. So maybe there are some connections there we could explore. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Roberto. Hello, everybody. What I'd like to do, if I may, is to start briefly with an initiative that is currently underway here in our region in Northern Ireland. Some years ago, the UK government introduced an economic development mechanism called city region deals, and a number of these have already been successfully implemented in Britain. 2 years ago here in Northern Ireland, we were given approval to establish the Belfast City Region Deal, and this will be a programme of activities and initiatives that will take place over the next 15 years. The funding for this package of activity will be roughly £1 billion sterling, and that potentially will leverage greater amounts as the projects get up and running. But before I go into the detail on that, I think I just want to establish I suppose, the tradition and heritage that our region has had in terms of innovation and technology to support economic development. I mean, stretching right back as far as the linen industry in the sort of 19th century, moving into the last century in terms of shipbuilding and our traditional heritage there with the Titanic amongst others. In aerospace, for example, in this region, we invented the ejector seat, which has saved many, many lives globally since it was first introduced. In healthcare technology, we invented the portable heart defibrillator, which is now in use globally in many locations, entertainment centers, sports grounds, ambulances, for example. And more recently in the entertainment, the media sector, we've developed the Game of Thrones series, which I think globally has been a big success, and we're building a tourism I suppose package around that. People who've seen the program want to come here and see where it was filmed. But one of the major innovative actions that will result from this city region deal for us is the establishment of a number of innovation-led institutes, one of which will be a new advanced manufacturing innovation centre. And what we're going to do there is basically showcase a factory of the future to enable small manufacturing companies in particular to come in and experiment with Industry 4.0 technologies. So really to give them an opportunity to try things out before they invest money in technology solutions. And this centre will link together existing specialist centres. It will tie in with centres at a national level. And this might sound not particularly innovative in one sense, in that there are other regions around the world that I know have done something like this before. But I look upon this as an opportunity as a follower. Rather than being a leader in this, we're going to follow and really hopefully learn from best practice from elsewhere in the world. There are other regions that have done this. They've tried things, perhaps made mistakes, learned from those. That is exactly what we want to do as we implement this initiative locally. Our centre, the Centre for Competitiveness, will be directly involved in the Manufacturing Innovation Centre, because we will act as the interface between academia on the one hand, who are bringing I guess research knowledge to help solve industrial problems, and we will help the small companies to articulate what their challenges and requirements are and map that against the support and assistance that the Innovation Centre and the academics and the engineers there will be able to offer. We're also working with a major global clean tech company headquartered in Switzerland to help us decide how we should structure an anaerobic digestion facility to assist local farmers. Agri-food is our biggest industrial sector, but the dairy sector within that has a problem in that the farmers spread slurry on the fields. This causes some problems in terms of water pollution, runoff to rivers and streams. So this proposed centre will take organic waste, will produce fertilizers that farmers can use that have lower levels of phosphates and nitrates, and therefore will address that particular problem. But it will also produce biomethane that can be fed into the national gas grid and used by private sectors, for example, transport industry. So there are a lot of things like that happening, Roberto, which I could go into a lot more detail on, but I'm aware I've probably used my initial 4 minutes, so I'm happy to possibly talk about that later.
Great examples, Paul. I think really, once again, building on existing capabilities and let's say industries that you already had in place in your let's say your history or your industrial manufacturing heritage, as you said.
Exactly.
But also I think a very interesting circular economy model related to dairy. So thanks for sharing that. We'll be back to that. Jefferson, I would turn to you, and I think what Paul has just commented provides lots of clues on things that you are doing. So Industry 4.0, you led the implementation of the Industry 4.0 Center down in Latin America, down in Brazil. Support to companies and translational research. And you manage this network, the Brazilian Industry Confederation of SENAI network of 27 centers or translational research institutes that are on the ground in different regions. So how do you approach the issues related to local development and growth?
Hi, Roberto. Thank you for it's a proud to be here discussing about such kind of thematics. But like Paul, I'm an aeronautical engineer, Paul, also. And we work with data. So then when we talk about the importance of Industry 4.0 and SENAI also, just to brief some points, work with data. SENAI is the largest private network nationwide in education and also in technological services. Paul, we have more than 2 million enrollments per year. And we work for more than 1,000 companies per year in Brazil. So that's amazing for 28 industrial sectors. And when you talk about Industry 4.0 in Brazil, we are not allowed to separate industry technologies in terms of technologies and people. For example, worldwide, we have about 3.5 billion people they have some types of contracts. And the most important thing is that considering these 3.5 billion people, 1 billion people are working in activities they didn't have exist in the last 10 years. So that's why in Brazil, we create a kind of network of innovation institutes. And this network of innovation institute was more focused on the capacity to implement new technologies and also new kind of skillings and reskillings nationwide. Not only technologies for sure, but that's why we created institutes. They have to work putting together companies, big companies, multinational companies, national companies, and also startups in 3 areas of expertise. One area is for sure, cities and industry intelligence. Another one for advanced materials, another one for biotechnology. So that's why we have spread nationwide 27, 28 institutes, 27 right now, but we are creating one more, 28 institutes. And we create a kind of platform in the last 10 years. This platform has to, for example, when you talk about cities, we have to understand the environment conservation, the plan for municipal parks, the characterization of preservation areas, and so far and so on. And when we talk about industries, we have to understand that worldwide, only 25% of the whole implementation we have done regarding the application of exponential technologies, such like artificial intelligence, data policy, autonomous robotics, digital trade, Internet of Things. So only 25% of the project implemented worldwide have been successfully implemented. That means 75% of exponential technology projects have failed. So that's amazing. So then we have to put all together in the same melting pot in Brazil to understand a little bit better the application of such kind of technologies and the consequences. So then we created in Brazil places that we in those places we put together new technological roads, internationalization, technological hubs, different kinds of investment flows, school of technology and businesses, a collective business atmosphere that's very important because you have to put in this place the culture of innovation, the corporative branding, the innovation to market, the corporate innovation. So in that place we are trying to escape a little bit the agenda, the traditional agenda that we do all separated. So just because of that, Roberto, we are trying, I think successfully, but we are trying to implement in the last 10 years such kind of institutes.
Thank you so much, Jefferson. There are 2 things that come to my mind hearing to you. One is this notion that local development or development at any level, it's complex. So you need to bring together different things: reskilling, training, technology, social context, investment, and you are trying to drive that through your centers, right?
And a little bit more, just a little bit more. With the application must be local, but the technologies we use are global. Right. So we have to use even more the word localization.
Perfect. And I think, as our chairman says, the notion of really resource global, act local.
Roberto, we have a surprise guest who is going to come on in just a moment. And let me just introduce her, Gianna Sagazio, who's the Director of Innovation from CNI. And she's here, and I've asked her as our sponsor to make a few remarks. And Jefferson, thank you for your tremendous comments. Gianna, you need to come over here. Okay. Good morning. It's a surprise.
There's something with the audio there, Jenna.
Yes.
I think that maybe you have. Okay, it's perfect now.
Just a minute. It's because I opened. Just a minute. It's okay now, right? So I'm very happy to be here with Deborah Winston-Smith. That is my friend and also my inspiration of leadership in innovation and competitiveness. It's an honor to be here with you. And I would like to say hello to Roberto, to Jefferson. I am here in the United States from CNI. The objective here is to establish new partnerships in the United States, build bridges between Brazil and the United States, and GFCC has always been our main partner. So we are talking about how to improve our partnership, and I am very glad to be here with you. I also would like to invite you to come to Brazil next year. We have our Innovation Summit, and we will be very glad to receive you in Brazil and perhaps to have some keynote speakers from here in our Innovation Summit. Last Innovation Summit, we had more than 3,500 CEOs from Brazil. So I think that it's a very good opportunity to improve our partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gianna, for being part of the GFCC and for making this session possible. And you are very modest. So because you are taking the summit to a new scale with 12,000 participants, that's what I heard from your team. So I think it's a great opportunity to engage globally. So Maria, I want to turn to you. We talked here technology. We talked sustainable technologies. We heard about food production. We heard about dairy. We heard from Jefferson in Brazil about the need to connect technology with different aspects. You are leading a cluster of clean tech companies in Denmark, right? And at the same time, there are lots of opportunities to drive growth in that space and sustainable development, clean technologies. Those technologies are also very much needed for cities, right? Cities have a big energy and resources footprint, right? So could you maybe share with us a bit what you are doing and how that connects with local in Copenhagen and other areas? And wonderful to have you, Maria.
Yeah, thank you, Roberto, and thank you for inviting me for this session. It's very inspirational so far, and it's an honor to take part in it. I will share some of the experiences and what I have from my daily work in Clean. Just to give you some background, Clean is a national cluster. As you said, a clean tech cluster. Actually, now we are focusing on environmental technologies. The Danish government appointed 14 strongholds and designated 14 cluster organizations for each stronghold. And we are one of these cluster organizations. And our main purpose is to facilitate cooperation between knowledge institutions, the public sector, and of course, the private sector. And as you said, the way we do this is, of course, acting locally. We look for very specific challenges. It can be at a city level, but it can also be at a corporate level. And then having these challenges defined, our role is to facilitate the innovation process, where we invite academia or we invite SMEs and startups to work around these challenges, and we see a lot of very interesting things come out of it. And the companies are very engaged because they can see that there is a demand for their whatever they develop, be it a technology or a service. And when you're a startup, time is a very crucial factor. So you would like to see that some of the time you spent, that something comes out of it in the near future. And when you have a city or a corporate engaged, they can really feel this demand, and many times the feedback we get is that we actually open doors for them. And we have an example of a company. They do these nudging devices for when you shower to take shorter showers. And we opened the door actually internationally in the UK, and they made a very big deal with a UK utility. And then I just talked to them last week, and they said, okay, this was a breakthrough for us, and we're now seizing the world. So that's what we really hope. I mean, Denmark is too small a market, so it's a good place to develop and to test and get your cases proven. But for most of the startups in Denmark, they're looking for the global market, because that's where the real business opportunities are, and especially within environmental technologies. So that's what we're trying to facilitate this, that they can get their technologies proven and that they can be showcased globally.
So you serve in some way as a kind of open innovation platform where you connect city or region or corporate needs with startups that are coming to the world with clean tech technologies, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and I need one of those devices for my stepson that nudge people to save water. So please send me the link afterwards.
I will do so. I have a teenager as well, so I think it's very needed.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Maria. No, we'll be back to you in relation to some of the things that we talked. But Kwanzaa, I want to turn to you because you've been working throughout your career with local economic development. You are now being, let's say you were recently a congressman in the United States, and now you are back to business, driving or working on the design implementation of a new economic innovation district. So what's your take on the, let's say, the things that are needed to foster growth at the local level?
Thank you, Roberto, and good morning to everyone. Also, thank you to Deborah. She actually kicked it off with place-based solutions. Really, throughout my career, it's really been about placemaking at the very, very local level. But in my case, it was placemaking for innovators. And truly, as the mayor said, anyone in any place has strengths and they have weaknesses. And you begin to think about what's great and what's unique in our community, and then you look at what's missing. And between those two poles, you can find all types of opportunity. And we've done the same in Atlanta. It takes leaders with vision, leaders who are honest with themselves and with their local community about what these assets are. But once you determine that, then you begin to look at the opportunity and sometimes your greatest weaknesses, and that's where you find your resilience. Atlanta was never known, and America really isn't known as a place for soccer. But in 2017, the city embraced the founder of our soccer team, Arthur Blank, and he invested in the team. The city and the state invested behind him. And we ended up having Atlanta United, which we were always into American football and baseball and basketball, but we discovered a new sport and it united our community in a way that we never seen. And now we have the largest turnout of any soccer stadium in the country, for sure, over 73,000 people on a regular basis who never would have been together before. So we took what was really a negative for us and we turned it into a positive, and it turned into economic development and job creation. When you're placemaking for innovators, you have to think about the things they need: housing, mobility, access to high quality food. So you can take a food desert and turn it into an environment where innovators want to be, because they need low cost housing and all the amenities so they can really focus their energy on the company or the idea or the creative effort that they're putting their energy into. And we've tried to do that. Housing is always something that's a challenge in America. It may be the same in other countries, but the innovation partnerships, and especially around our universities, and we've seen a new form of investment from the tech industry. Apple most recently made $100 million investment in a center called the Propel Center at Clark Atlanta University. It's based on the campus of an historically African-American college. And the idea is to link all of these colleges throughout the United States. Our vice president attended Howard University, which is one of those colleges. And we're taking something that had kind of turned into a lackluster environment, although it turned out some of our brightest minds, but the investment wasn't there. Now we're discovering that this asset could create a vice president. So why not reinvest in it and figure out how we can create more innovators utilizing all the new technologies that are on the table. And Apple and Georgia Power and other companies, Disney, have stepped up to be a part of that. So you can take what has made you worse in some ways and turn it into something that makes you first. And that type of resilience is what I think any country, any city, any locale can actually do. You just have to mobilize your resources, embrace your entrepreneurial spirit, and put extra energy behind it. And I'm just really encouraged by everyone on the call, and I'm picking up great ideas that I can utilize back home. And I'd love to share more about the project we're working on related to water as well when I get a chance. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kwanzaa. Two things that I took note here. One is that it takes a whole package. If you want to be an innovative place, you need to attract innovators, you need to make them stay. So you need to address several things at the same time. But also this notion that, and you mentioned investment that Apple is making, what I see a connection with things that Jefferson has mentioned about connecting with others around the globe in this network of traditional Black colleges. So being local, but connecting in the wider space. So, and for sure, we want to hear more about your project. I think we'll have time. We'll have time in a minute. So, Deborah, would you like to add something as you got started with this vision about transformation and really transforming regions?
Thank you. First of all, let me thank everyone for their really outstanding initial comments. And I think we have a tremendous perspective of what's going on around the globe and how each of our speakers is not only building on best practices, but identifying their assets. And as Kwanzaa said, the weaknesses that they need to challenge and utilize to get to the next place. I think it would be great to have a conversation a little bit about connecting the dots on leadership, because everyone on the call is a leader here. They are actually developing the strategies, implementing them. But what are some of the challenges they have in getting all the stakeholders that play a role to move forward, and any advice and thoughts? Because at the end of the day, it's all of you who are leaders, but you have to have the communities follow and build on the vision. So leadership is really key.
I see you have your hand raised, Jefferson.
Because this question put by Deborah was so good. That is a precious time we have here. And my friends, I have a anxiety in my arms here right now, because after COVID-19 and after those 15 global indicators, we need to 17 global indicators we need to improve in the next years. Before COVID-19, all value we had proposed for innovation was focused on the individual needs, most or on the individual needs. More, we ask it always, how do it change my life? Such kind of product. So questions about self-transcendence, hope, fun, motivation, so far and so on. But after COVID-19, we have put value on the society. if you can see, the problems of the cities are more focused, no more focus on the how quick is the lamps, or how is the quality of the level of artificial intelligence to improve, to understand people, and but it's more for collectivity and more for things. So and then sustainability, inclusiveness, job creation. So that is my point. As I said, we created a lot of institutes nationwide to obtain industries. So your point of view, I'm so sorry, Roberto, because I'm doing questions. I'm asking the people because I really would like to understand a little bit better what is going to happen in the next years. For example, we are going to talk about Industry 4.0 or Hospital 4.0, or Health Systems 4.0. So that's way.
So you want to broaden the conversation, and thanks for that, bringing like social aspects into more clearly into that. But Jefferson, before we turn to that, maybe if you could just briefly comment and building on what Deborah said, what does it take to build those partnerships, the different local partnerships, including the ones that you have built? So what's needed in terms of leadership? What's your secret sauce? Would you like to share something about that?
Yeah, this is a very important question, because we have to understand maybe a little bit the problems we have right now, because I don't know if people, they are understanding the enormous pressure you have faced on regulatory, skilling, infrastructure, and organizational frameworks. So I don't know if the people, they are prepared to understand such kind of complexity you have had after this 10 years, because we have a lot of different kinds of technologies, very strong on our society. So I'm not quite sure that the leadership is prepared for such kind of challenges we have faced right now. But anyway, sure, we have people, Gianna, for example. Gianna is leading a huge initiative nationwide, putting at the same table people, they are focused on such kind of challenges we have right now. But Gianna, maybe she has 300 or 1,000 people in our country is a huge challenge we have here.
So maybe Petros, Maria, Paul, Kwanzaa, this question that Deborah has posed about how you build those coalitions that are needed to a cluster in Denmark, to the different networks that you, Petros, need to put together, being the mayor, but also bring in private sector, the different, even to build the center pole or the new initiatives. How do you, what type of leadership is needed for that? In your project, Kwanzaa. So maybe, would you like to go first, Petros?
Well, yeah, absolutely. First of all, you need to have conviction that what you're doing is in the right direction. And to have conviction, you must have studied the case and to really know the various parameters, so people cannot easily corner you, because every change you want to implement, there's going to be some people who will actually resist it. The second very important thing is to find, like Jesus Christ did, the 12 apostles. You cannot do it alone. You have to find those foxes. The foxes doesn't mean to be the head of the top guns in the area. It have to be the people that are maybe lower ranking, but they know how the system works and they know how to sniff around and believe in you, and they believe that what you're doing is good for the society and the system, but it's also personally good for them. They will get something out of it more than just being nice people and volunteering for the common good. So once you get those foxes, your apostles, and you're not alone and you don't feel alone and you can delegate authority and get some people working like what we're doing right now. You consider us possibly foxes, and that's why you invited Kwanzaa and the rest of us here. Then you start building this network, and those people will attract more people, and you get a critical mass for the change, because every change needs a critical mass, and you cannot do it alone, and you will always get people who will just say no just because you say yes, and if you said no they would say yes, and then vice versa. So this is something that's from the ancient times what has been going on. So finding the right people like yourselves, and yourselves find some lower ranking people who are also foxes, and then you can start building. Once you have conviction and you know what you're doing, and people can get convinced that you're making sense with what you're saying, and it's not just a pie in the sky. So thanks, Roberto.
Thank you, Petros. So who wants to go next?
Roberto, could I perhaps add something to that? I think that was a very eloquent way, Petros, of describing my view also on what leadership should be. This is sort of a postulate approach. I think to achieve what we need to achieve in the regions that we're working in, needs a collaborative leadership style, a willingness to work with others, a willingness and a humility, I suppose, a willingness to recognize that I, as an individual, don't know all the answers, and I need to work with others who have particular knowledge or skill sets or resources that we can call upon to help us achieve what we want. So recognizing that first, I think, is important. And secondly, having some sort of common purpose. What I've heard this afternoon, today, so far in the conversation, I think reflects our experience here locally, is that when you bring people and groups and companies and academic organizations and government bodies together, there has to be some way of facilitating the conversation that results in a set of commonly agreed objectives, because otherwise the resources that are needed to implement the strategy just will not be forthcoming if everyone isn't streamlined. So humility to know, I guess, to recognize that I don't know everything. I need to work with others, and certainly as far as our center is concerned, that is exactly what we've done. The clusters that we have facilitated, it's very much about facilitating opportunities for people to work together, and the collaborations that we facilitate do help those companies, but on the part of individual companies, there's a recognition that there may be a risk for them involved. And I think when we look at government agencies in particular, one of the fears that I have is, I suppose, and this is more, I guess, from the political point of view, the short-term sort of approach that many politicians seem to take to some of these initiatives. Because if you think about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the targets that we have as a global community for 2030, that's 9 years away. It's not that long, but it's 9 years away, longer than most democratic governments actually sit in power. And therefore, the risk of short-term views on what particular political parties and governments might want to try to achieve could conflict with what we believe actually needs to happen on the ground to achieve these long-term targets.
Thank you, Paul. Maria, Kwanzaa, would you like to? And maybe I could bring some questions here that are also related to that. We got a question from Pedro. When you have this sort of setting with different stakeholders involved, who should lead the efforts? Yeah. So really understanding the complexity. I think Paul has mentioned that, of settings. Who should lead that, and how can we build that understanding on complexity? And then I'll pull other questions along the way, but Kwanzaa and Maria, over to you, Kwanzaa.
So there've been some great things said, and I have to say this is a wonderful group. Again, we need to put this in a bottle. It is definitely the we versus I, and that shared vision, looking for a collective win-win, as I mentioned. And let me add two things. One is, we talked about clusters earlier, and Atlanta was able to figure out logistics with our port and our airport. being the busiest passenger airport and the port having the opportunity to expand as a way to invest in our future. FinTech and cybersecurity, and even the auto manufacturers ended up relocating within 200 miles of the city because they came to our airport. So, you never know what gives you an upside. So you have to be a little more creative. But there was a small company that started in my district, going back to the placemaking for cities. And as an elected leader, I went to visit all these small 3-person shops. And that company was MailChimp. It was 2 people, and they recently sold for $12 billion. And I went to their little office and just showed up. They had a complaint about the owner of the building about to kick them out. And now they've grown to thousands of people, phenomenal company that offers all types of email solutions, but $12 billion being sold to Intuit. And I remember when they were a baby. So seeing that happen as a leader really gives you the inspiration to do it again and want to be there to make sure that the incubator environment, and it's not just the technology incubator, but it's the environment where they feel safe and they're nurtured and they can grow up to do what they need to do to create these types of jobs. And leaders need to be accessible and available to deliver that type of connectivity. And that's what I've tried to do. But one other term related to the foxes, I was with a lobbyist yesterday and he said, Kwanzaa, we have swamp foxes too. And so they know how to navigate and get things done. And you always need some of them, as the mayor described, to help you move your agenda forward. I'm working on some very challenging land that has floodplain and the water department doesn't want to receive it. So we initially started with leading with a development, and we pivoted now to water stewardship. So solve for the technical problem because the water is contaminating the river that's coming out of the creek. So instead of focusing on development, we have become a water company, and we're going to offer water services, and we're going to filtrate the water, and we're going to reuse the water, and we'll be able to offer the water back to the industrial park at a lower cost basis than buying the clean water out of the system. The gray and the black water will reutilize. So, sometimes you discover an opportunity out of a challenge, and they always exist for leaders. And you just have to be, again, willing, available, and accessible to those that you're trying to move forward with a shared vision.
Leaders need to be accessible and available. Thank you for sharing that, Kwanzaa. Maria, what does it take, this leadership challenging, and what does it take to drive a plus where startups and government and different organizations involved?
I think for us, a key element has been stakeholder engagement. When defining our strategy and our strategic direction, we focused a lot on the stakeholder involvement, both of our members, but also of anyone we actually thought who could be important in this process. And this has created a lot of ambassadors. I mean, we're a small organization, but by having people engaged in this process, I experienced that they actually take ownership. And I get really proud when you're out in the field and you hear someone talk about clean as if it were their own baby, because they were engaged in this initial process of defining our focus. And another thing I think is important for us as a cluster organization is looking for partnerships. I can't remember who also talked about collaboration, but I think that is key. There are a lot of other organizations like ours, and you could see them as competitors, but I think it's key to seek out the synergies and look for how can we make each other better. So rather than competing and trying to see them as our companies and your companies, let's look at interfaces, because there are so many things that overlap. I mean, you have when you look at the digital technologies, when you look at environmental technologies being used in all different sectors. I mean, we need to be inspired by how they're used in different sectors. So, and then the last thing which I'm really seeing now is that instead of profiling ourselves, we actually let the good stories talk for themselves. So by having created success stories for our companies, we of course help them communicate this, but it's so much stronger when they tell the story rather than us. So I think those were my three good views on this.
So thank you for sharing some practical recommendations and tools, like having ambassadors, people who could own part of your brand, but also will amplify that and leverage their own profiles, and also a strategy about communications. So thanks for that, Maria. Gianna, I don't want to put you on the spot, but talking on leadership, and Jefferson has mentioned like May and the things that you lead in Brazil, maybe you could share a bit about how you have built that alliance and what it takes to craft this complex partnership.
Okay. CNI represents all the industries in Brazil, all sectors, or all sizes. And during the crisis to 2008, the leaders, entrepreneurial leaders, and the president of CNI, they discussed about how to overcome the crisis. And they decided to launch a movement to strengthen the ecosystem of innovation in Brazil, believing that innovation is the main vector of development. So this movement was launched 13 years ago. Now, Jefferson, we have around 500 CEOs, the biggest CEOs in Brazil, of the biggest companies in Brazil. And we work with two main objectives. The first one is to contribute with the Brazilian government to formulate effective policies on innovation. I can give you many examples of outcomes from May. For example, we worked a lot to have the innovation in our constitution for the new legal framework of science, technology, and innovation. Also, new laws. For example, this year, we approved a new law for the National Fund for Science, Technology, and Innovation. So now we have the budget, the fund to use in its main purpose, that is to develop science, technology, and innovation in Brazil. But I can give you many other examples, like the new framework of startups. Also, we work to train and to educate the people for the future. May proposed new guidelines to modernize the engineering in Brazil. And now this proposal from May is official. The Ministry of Education, they accepted our proposal, and we have new guidelines for engineering in Brazil that was built considering the proposal from May, that is the proposal from the main entrepreneurs in Brazil. Commitment? Yes, and we also have the commitment of our entrepreneurs to develop Amazonia in a sustainable way. May has a huge agenda, for example, legal framework, human resources for innovation, small companies, startups, small companies, technology companies, and also internationalization through innovation, financing for innovation. For example, financing for innovation, we have a publication that is utilized for the private sector and also for the Brazilian government, that has all the instruments to support innovation, how the companies can articulate these instruments. And we also propose new instruments to finance innovation in Brazil. So I can give you many examples what May is doing to strengthen our ecosystem of innovation, always supporting the Brazilian government. So May nowadays is the main forum of dialogue between the entrepreneurial sector, the Brazilian government, including executive and legislative, and the academia. And we are discussing the future of Brazil in a structural way. So we have always more companies and more leaders that want to participate at May, and we are very open because we consider that this discussion is strategic for our future. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Gianna. And being a Brazilian, thank you so much for your work and betting on the future. That's something that's very important. So thank you for that. We have some great questions here on the Q&A. So maybe what I could do is to read some of those questions and see who here on the session would like to pick on those, right? We have 3 questions coming from our colleague Guilherme, and I'll try to bundle those questions, right? The first one, it really is about on resources to generate sustainable solutions for cities, right? There's a view sometimes that there's no lack of money for new innovative projects, but sometimes there's a lack of trust or capabilities to generate those projects, sustainable projects. So this is one question. What's your take on that? What's the missing thing? Is it in your different realities, right? And I think connected to that, I think we already have talked about, there's another question that Guilherme poses about trust and human values. We explored several of those things, but the issue of trust goes back to the first thing. And I would say probably trust and social capital, right? So what's missing? Is capital in the form of finance or social capital, right? Maybe we could address those 2 questions, see if any of you would have a comment about that. What's missing in your realities, financial capital or social capital? Petros, I saw you raise your hand.
Capital is globally a scarce resource. There's never enough of it. And you have various systems to allocate capital. Governments do it with various products. Banks do it with loans. The stock market does it with equity, IPOs. Venture capitalists do it their own way. So there is a real scarcity of capital. Now with COVID, most central banks have done heavy quantitative easing and they've allowed people to borrow more easily. But even in that case, you have like a digital system. The strong players have access to capital. The small to medium ones really have a hard time finding capital. There's also, of course, an element of distrust, but it's a natural element of distrust because trillions of dollars have been wasted in products that could never pay for themselves. So every time that somebody comes up with an innovation idea, that doesn't mean that that innovation idea will ever work. It will work in the mind of the inventor, but it may not be in the market, or it may have so many problems once you start applying it that is really not of great use. So I think the system will continue to work as it is now. I think the central banks will pump more money into the system and try to keep interest rates very low until the oversupply of money that has led into the revolution of cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies have come to life because people don't trust the creation of money by central banks and then don't trust the government to know who has what money. But the governments eventually will find ways to know who owns how much cryptocurrencies, and there will not be much escape for that system as well. But it shows that, you know, capital is scarce and people are trying to find safer ways. And the element of distrust is there because, you know, people abuse the money they get. Many people don't pay back the money they get. Many projects are not worthwhile as they look at the beginning, because in the roadshows, people show a great picture of what they want the money for. But in the end, how many of those are actually worth it? Maybe 15%, and 85% are really for scrap. So I'm saying that I don't think this system that exists today is going to change very fundamentally, other than the great rise of electronic banking like Revolut, which of course do not give much money. They facilitate payments. They're not great in lending money. So I don't think that system is going to change very much. And it's a matter of being able to show really good deals to all the people that have capital to invest, like private equity. So private equity will be more important than bank lending in the future, because banks are over-regulated. It's difficult to open an account. It's even difficult to close an account. Very difficult to transfer money right and left. So you will get this system of quasi-banks, electronic banks that will substitute, but they won't make it much easier for you to borrow money. So I think we have to just swallow it and move there steady as the system goes today. So thanks, Roberto.
Thank you, Petros, for reminding everybody that capital is fundamental. We need capital investment to move the needle. But you also have highlighted this asymmetry between big fishes who can access capital in an easier way than small fishes, right? So maybe, not sure if anyone else would like to comment on this, on the relationship between social capital, financial capital, and maybe how we can help the small players, the startups, or the small players to access capital. Jefferson.
I don't know if I can answer the question, but if you see the 17 global goals, the point number 2 is zero hunger and sustainable agriculture. So let me give you an example that maybe can put exactly the problem you have faced right now. I don't know if you know, but Brazil is one of the countries, or you know very well, Brazil is one of the countries that help to feed the world. So that's why we have our agriculture system is huge. For example, in Brazil, or slaughter 12 million chickens per day. Yes, in Brazil, or slaughter 12 million chickens per day. And the life of a chicken is 45 days, approximately 45 days. A slaughter chicken weighs around 1.5 kilogram. And to produce 1 kilogram of chicken meat, we need 1.6 kilogram of corn. Corn, yes, corn. We plant corn a lot. United States, they plant corn a lot. A chicken needs about 3 kilograms of corn, a single chicken. Consequently, only for the production of chickens, we need 36,000 tons of corn per day. So that means we have, I work with data, okay? That means we have to plant amazing areas worldwide just to produce corn for the chickens. And in counterpart, in 17 global goals, we have this proposal, the number 2, zero hungry and sustainable agriculture. So that's why social capital and financial capital, we have a contrast. What is exactly we have? What exactly we have to do in the next years regarding for 9 billion people in 9 years you are going to have. Yeah?
So you are saying that we will need to fundamentally change some systems, right?
Yes, it's difficult.
So thank you for that. So would anyone have a take on that, on how to change those things? Paul, you mentioned dairy and your project, like your circular economy project. I'm not sure if you would like to add something.
Just comment on what Jefferson has just said. I really like his use of data to help substantiate and define the extent of the problem. And therefore, once you know the extent of the problem, at least you can begin to think about how you go about solving that and what is required, whether it's capital or ongoing operational revenue. I mean, the project I described very briefly earlier, in a way is also going to be driven by underlying data analysis, because the dairy farmers in this region produce very high quality cattle, who in turn produce high quality dairy products. But the cost of doing that in terms of the impact it has on land is significant, and there is regulation coming down the line that will place limits on the types of fertilizer and the sort of phosphate and nitrate content of fertilizer that farmers can use. So they're faced with one of two options once these regulations come into place. Either they have to reduce the size of their herds so that they're operating within those thresholds. And if they do that, their businesses suffer an impact. There are less sort of cattle in the supply chain, as it were, and therefore ultimately the consumer will pay more for the products that are produced. Flip that on its head and look the other way around. See, is there, I suppose, an environmentally and sustainable way of addressing that problem and at the same time producing other value-added products and services? And this project that I mentioned that we're trying to establish will do just that. It will produce fertilizers that the farmers can use that will fit within the regulatory limits based on data, which I really appreciate Jefferson's insight there. But likewise, it will also produce another value-added product, the renewable product in terms of the biomethane that will feed into the gas network. So I would agree absolutely with Jefferson's analysis. You've got to start with the data and base your decisions around that, because otherwise it's guesswork, and you're more likely to get it wrong if you're guessing than you are if you base it on evidential analysis.
Thank you for that, Paul. Maria, I'm not sure, is there anything that you are doing, or the companies you are working with, they're not just like localized solutions, but also this type of systems-wide re-engineering process that Jefferson and Paul have commented? Anything that comes to your mind in relation to the cases and examples that clean tech companies in Denmark are doing?
I don't have anything to add right here. I need to think a bit more about it. I was reflecting on the question around capital.
Yep.
Maybe I can give some input to that, then I may come back to the other. It's a complex issue, but what we're seeing with regards to capital, I actually see a lot of investments there. There is a lot of investors ready to at least invest in my area. What we do see is lacking is more what is the English word? Risk investments where you're willing to take a risk. So that's what I really see the startups looking for.
Risk appetite.
Thank you. Risk appetite. Yeah. And luckily we do see that, I mean, the Danish government is doing something on this. I mean, we get some funding that we can distribute to this type of projects. I think that helps a little on the way, but I still see a large need for financing of pilots, and also the willingness to see projects not succeed, because I think that's also very important. Yeah, that was just a comment on that, but I guess it's a very geographical, it's very different depending on what geography you're in. I mean, in the Nordics, I think I mean, people are looking to Danish companies or Nordic companies to invest in, because we have had success with these environmental technologies. So I think right now it's a good timing, but I know globally there's a lot going on. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maria. We are approaching like 5 minutes to close our session here. So really wanted to have like a quick round. And I'll read one of the questions that we have here for Cartini. And Cartini asks, what are the advantages of and challenges of the relationship between geography, the local, and innovation, especially in relation to economic growth and innovation capacity implications? And bundled with that, and maybe we could have like this final round looking at that, but also if you had to give one advice to our audience here in terms of building future innovation, competitiveness at the local level and connecting that with sustainability and resilience, what would that advice be? Who wants to go first? And this will be our final round.
Roberto, I have one simple suggestion I would like to make, and to secure our futures generally, and that is plant more trees. Very simple, and I was intrigued to hear about the work going on in Amazonia in Brazil. Those of us who don't live there but are looking in are obviously concerned about the deforestation that's taking place and the impact that has potentially on a global basis. But even regionally where we are, we do not have enough trees, and trees would be a very simple, straightforward way of engaging the community and if you like, capitalizing on that social capital that you mentioned earlier, Roberto, to enable individuals to feel as though they have skin in the game in terms of securing our future as a planet and as a race.
Thank you, Paul. And I'll ask maybe Simone and Vanessa to share here one of the reports that we created from one previous sessions, the one about innovation, because we had a case exactly about planting trees that one of our corporate members is doing in Saudi Arabia. So I think that would be very interesting to check. Any other comments? Who would like to go next?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you again for having me. And I'll just say, we're in an era of tremendous infrastructure spend in the United States, but it's happening all over the world. So I would say innovating with our infrastructure spend is an opportunity to create a whole new world if we do it right and do it well. But it requires much more thoughtfulness than we might be seeing on the table just around pure engineering, because there's soft things that also could be called infrastructure.
Thank you so much, Kwanzaa. We would love to have information about the case you are working on and to feature that. I think it is very innovative how you have approached the water issue. So Kwanzaa, please send us that. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Maria, I think that you had your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think my advice, sitting in my chair, is to disrupt, dare to disrupt, and see technologies in new settings across new sectors. I really see a huge potential, and I see that people are starting to realize this. We need to do things very differently in the future if we want to save this earth. So I think we have some work ahead of us, but I think it's possible. Yeah.
Dare
thanks
to
for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. So dare to think and do things differently. Thanks for that. Jefferson would like to go?
Yeah, innovation for me, we need two pillars. Yeah? One of them is the capacity of invention. That means you have to understand the things. You have to study. You have to have deep learning, deep knowledge about something. Another thing for me is creativity. So creativity, you have to have the association. You have to have the idea for integration. You have to participate in such kind of team, in different kinds of teams. You have to have in your mindset the ability for diversity and to accept the controversies. So it's impossible to have such kind of requirements if you don't have good education. That is one of the most things I think we have to have in our country, education designed for something, for society, not only to learn things. So education for me is the main word for innovation.
Invest in training and education. Thank you. Petros?
Absolutely agree with Paul's idea of planting billions of more trees. I had sent a letter to President Bush when I was Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2008 about that idea. I don't know what happened. Can't even find the copy. Education paramount. The access to knowledge now is much more democratic. You can get into the internet and your Google and your search engines. You can get any information about anything. So the rich and the poor maybe have less of a rift in ability to develop and handle knowledge. What I'm worried about, Deborah, is this rift between East and West, US and China, because innovation needs open minds and open markets. And my feeling is that markets are starting to close a little bit rather than continue to open up. Fukuyama's end of history doesn't seem to be here. We're going into reverse gear. So that is a big problem. And the fact that Russia is out of the game and into various sorts of embargoes, and China is the same out of the way, then I think we're regressing a little bit in that capacity to innovate, because innovation, you need huge markets. We're 7 billion people on this planet now. And it's one thing you have 7 billion people as one big market, and it's another
like China.
Yeah. So this issue with China, I think, is something that it's not as big as climate change, which is immediate and for everyone, but it's something to start addressing. We cannot go on the next 20 years with this continuous animosity and tit for tat kind of thing. We need to just find a solution. Similarly with Russia, whose GDP, mind you, we think of Russia as a superpower. The GDP of Russia is the sum of Spain, Portugal, and Holland. That's it. No. And we think of them as a superpower. They're not. There's no Russian car in the market. There's no Russian refrigerator in the market. There's no Russian computer in the market. They are good in aerospace and some defense systems, and that's about it. So I think we should stop worrying that they are the biggest threat to the world. They are bad boys in many respects. They do things that are not to their own benefit. Because if I do something nasty and it's for my benefit, fine, but it's against their actual interest. But it's something, I think this approach has to start at some point, and we need to solve these global problems of climate change and economic growth and economic inequalities together. We cannot afford to continue segmenting ourselves as we're actually doing today. So many thanks, Roberto, and many thanks, Deborah, for giving us this opportunity to connect with so many great people around. It's very encouraging to know how many good minds there are around. Thanks.
Thanks for being here, Petros. So building bridges to build a better world, Deborah and Gianna, over to you.
Gianna, you go.
Yes, I fully agree with all that was mentioned here. I just would like to reinforce that I believe that the collaboration is essential. I don't believe that the governments can solve the problems alone. They will need, they will need the support of all sectors. So I believe that in the case of Brazil, this collaboration is essential because really the government can't do everything alone. And also, I believe that collaboration between countries, between institutions, I believe that we need to reinforce the capability of establish new breeds and advance to create a better world. I believe that this is essential and not easy, because we know that we have difference. It's we are living difficult times, but we need to continue working to overcome all these challenges and work together. Thank you.
Roberto, let me thank you for your leadership in putting together the Frame the Future dialogues. This was really an outstanding one. Let me thank all of our great panelists representing their respective nations and regions. I think this was really one of our best discussions because it connected so many of the components of our 5 pillars for framing the future. Just on the local development and the regional innovation that drives that, I just want to add a couple thoughts, and these surfaced in the discussion. You know, we talked about leadership, and we'll all remember Petrus as having the apostles. That will be something we'll all carry forward because it's so true. But let's not forget that during COVID, we all went online. We're still online. People left cities. They went to the countryside. You know, one of our colleagues, Chad Evans, who's in the chat, said, you know, we had all the talk about smart cities, but everybody wants safe suburbs. So we saw this movement of people to locales in different places during COVID, certainly in the United States, I think in other parts of the world. But that brings me back to the fact that we all have to live somewhere. And we choose, yes, on many reasons, where we live and why. And so every one of us investing in the place where we live, investing our social capital, our time, our energy, our all of these things to make the place where we live much, much better and prosperous. And so we haven't talked at all about the power of philanthropy and how it drove, you know, regional development, local development. I'll just return, you know, Kwanzaa mentioned a brilliant thing about the soccer initiative in Atlanta, and that, of course, brought together a lot of private sector investment and philanthropy. But again, you know, who has built over the years our opera houses, our symphonies, our art museums? Most of those, certainly in the United States, but I think in other parts of the world, and were driven by individuals who invested in their place. And so linking philanthropy and development and the culture that gives people a vibrancy to live. I'm going to just share something because I think many of you know I'm an archaeologist, the Bronze Age, and Petrus didn't mention, but they've discovered outside of Sparta, the Mycenaean palace of Helen of Sparta and Menelaus. Everybody in the world is going to want, when they come to Greece, they're going to want, yes, to go down and see the place of Leonidas and the Lycurgan Constitution, but they're going to want to go visit the unique place in the world, which is the Palace of Menelaus. So let's not forget that we choose where we live, integrating our culture, our social capital, and yes, driving innovation and new job creation. And in the United States, the infrastructure that we're going to spend is going to go out into the country. There is a tremendous social dismissal in our country of just having, as I said, coastal spots of innovation and ignoring the rest of our country that makes us who we are. And that's true for every one of the countries that's represented here. And Gianna didn't mention, and I'll just jump in because I've seen it. You know, one of the great entrepreneurs in Brazil, Pedro Passo, who created Natura, based on Amazonian unique products, cosmetics, but many other things. How many people know that Natura owns Body Works? What else do they own?
Aesop and Avon.
Yeah, they own 3 of the major global cosmetic companies, but their brand is Natura. They're the biggest in the world. Their brand is still in the Amazonia. They do so much, the social, everything. And so that's something I want us not to forget, that all of us as individuals also have the power to galvanize, you know, the investments from individuals. You know, so many of the wealthy people today are investing in causes, which are great, but they're not investing in their communities. And we need to go back to that. That's a back to the future imperative for regional development. So I want to thank everybody for their participation, joining us. And I will take advantage of us being here. You know, we're going to announce this formally in December at the GFCC Anniversary Innovation Summit, which we will have virtually, but it will be done out of Washington, that in 2022, we are going to have the Global Innovation Summit in Greece, hosted by our Greek colleagues and partners. So that's going to be an exciting opportunity to learn more about what's going on there, as well as other parts of the world. So thank you all, and wishing everybody a wonderful day.
And don't forget the Spartan Cosmetics, Deborah.
Yes, I know.
The Helen. That's what, because you just mentioned
We
it.
will
Bye-bye.
put them together.
Before we go, Petrus, two quick things. One, a GFCC tradition. We're take a picture here, so please turn on your cameras and look at the camera. So Kwanzaa, if you and my colleagues, Simone and Riley, okay. And also this
Hold on a second. Hold on. Done.
Wonderful.
Roberto, please send the photo.
I'll
Yes.
do it, Gianna. I'll do it.
But
And
also, we're having such a great time today. I have to say, Petrus, you'll love this. Gianna just whispered to me, when we come to Greece, Natura will come, and they'll be the ones that can do the perfume and the cosmetics based on ancient Troy. And
Bravo. That's exciting. Good. There's no escape for you. Okay, and Simone, thank you very much.
Before we go, just one quick announcement. This will be continued. We'll be here in 2 weeks talking natural resources. So please share that in your networks. We'll have the link here being shared. And next week on the 29th, we're having a special session on the future of universities. So please check that out. We have leaders from around the globe talking about the future university. And one thing that I took note, and Kwanzaa, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but your words, leaders needs to be accessible and available. So thank you so much, Jefferson, Paul, Petrus, Kwanzaa, Maria, Gianna, Deborah for sure, and my colleagues, Simone, Vanessa, and Riley, who made this possible.
I want to thank again CNI for their sponsorship of this outstanding session, and Gomez and Gianna, thank you so much for your leadership in the GFCC, being a sustaining member, and wishing everybody a great day. Thank you.
I thank you. I thank you for the partnership.
Great to see you in Denmark, Brazil, Peru. There are some people there. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.